Is that a problem? Because it's filming now.
Shouldn't be.
That'd be terrible with no audio.
Alright, so you say simple, and I already have like 12 questions.
Are we guessing the drawing?
No, it's not right. Picture.
Did you hit that?
Give me an
Nice. Thomas is looking thick today.
This is you.
No, through the phone. Must be the new phone.
Oh.
A. That's 15.
Okay. This is going to kind of stem into hopefully a secondary conversation about anatomy and kind of just more positional stuff that we all want to hit tonight. But first things first. All right, if we were to simplify, now like I've been thinking a ton about adults lately. It's like plagued up my every thought. So like this is a huge relation to them, but this really goes for everybody. Think of, and this is actually really good for you too because it's about programming. Think of everyone you meet as like a video game character, right? You grab like your setting, all right, and you have your character profile, okay? This is Jim. How you doing?
Hey, Jim.
Okay. And every video game character has these 5 qualities, right? There's strength, there's power, there's hypertrophy, endurance, and movement, okay? Strength, we know strength, they don't really need to describe it. Power is going to be your sprints, your jumps, your throws. Your hypertrophy is going to be lean body mass, okay? Endurance is aerobic output, like lactic anaerobic, and then creatine phosphate. Those are all your energy systems, like kind of development, and then your ability to move, okay? And like with that, think of like variability. And what I mean by variability is like, do you have all the options available that you need to be good at what you need to do, okay? So for an adult, right, like can you walk up the stairs pain-free? Can you bend down and pick something up without your back hurting? For an athlete, can you shift in your hips in a crossover? Can you recover your heel high enough in a sprint? Can you jump? Can you do all these things? Wow. And like, or like for a baseball player, can you load into your back hip and transpose that into your front arm? Crap like that. Okay? So everyone comes to us, they all have some semblance of this, right? Okay? Where for athletes, you want to maximize these out to like the nth degree. So like say like this is like your 100% zone. Like we want to tap these out, right? So it's like, hey, I get somebody, they come to me with this much strength, this much power, that much, or you probably have this much hypertrophy, barely any endurance, barely any movement, right? So like somebody like this, it's gonna be more like a Trevor, okay? And I don't say that to pick on you, but right, like look at you, you're big and you're strong. Those two combined usually give you a decent amount of power, okay? But at what cost? You don't move as well as most, right? Because the more tension and compression and muscle mass you put on, the more you restrict. And then it's really, really exhaustive to try to fuel muscle, right? Like your heart has to work twice as hard to get just as much blood as someone like Alex or me or him or think of like a little athlete, right? To circulate all that tissue for it to contract and do its thing, okay? So.
I'm going to have a heart attack?
No.
Okay.
Good. You're fine. Okay. So, but like,
It's not rolled out.
if you're thinking of like traits, like we want to make sure we give people what they don't have. That's probably going to make them better at what they're not, right? So if I take someone like, let's take Eric for example here. If I restart here, okay.
There's Eric right there.
That's perfect.
So let's look at his history, right? Like he's powerful. We know this, right? Like he can sprint, he can throw, he can jump. All right, there's no question. That's probably his best quality. That can't really be there without some levels of relative strength, right? So pound for pound, the dude's strong. Like he pulled 5 before, okay? Hypertrophy is kind of but there doesn't need to be, right? Like look at a sprinter. Like they're jacked, but they're not like. And don't think of hypertrophy as like necessarily size, right? You can be lean. Like think of like Colton. Like Colton's jacked, but he's not. He's like 180 pounds. Like you can like be jacked. You know, like I'm thinking of like fat-free mass, right? Like healthy muscle tissue. Like you're not fat. Like you have good hypertrophy. Like
But I'm not.
you are in the
jacked
one.
out of my mind.
Yeah, you're in the 1% though. Like look at like you compared to an average person, like oh that guy's looking athletic, right? Endurance, like it's probably not as great as it could be right now, I would say, right? It's probably pretty terrible. And movement, he's pretty restricted. Okay? So like how do we write a program for Eric?
You work on endurance
Yes?
and movement as well.
Yes.
And then you could probably go for a little combination of strength and hypertrophy.
Cool. How do you write a program? What traits do you have? What do you need to maintain? What do you need to give them? Programming 101 simplified. Okay.
But that would, if you're going to focus on that stuff, then his power would probably decrease, correct?
Why?
Because like you said with the spaghetti sauces, once you start cranking up other ones will be cranked down a little bit?
Yeah, but it only takes about half as much to maintain stuff like that, right?
Oh, okay.
So like I could put Eric on a 3x10 at 75% deadlift program for probably 2 months, and maybe and then dose him with more tempo variations for like endurance, and have him do like lower level, like what you call like sensory motor, like accessory work and resets. And what we're doing is we're going to drive this. This improves recovery, so it's probably going to actually improve strength too. Strength goes up, typically like these two are correlated. It's going to go up, and because of how like you can restore movement through accessory work, it's a lot of time under tension because you're breathing and you're concentrating on long, like slower breaths. If you can do endurance via weights, so like we can drive up hypertrophy. All right, so like you can drive these up, and look, and like it'll kind of all
It's
go
got
up.
a
Like
99 rating.
That boy on X Games.
like for example, right? Like I started doing this weird program where like I was doing conditioning 3 days a week. I've never done that before in my life. Okay, and then I've never also pulled 440 for 20 in my life either. So it's like yeah, like you can take away something and focus on something. Like you definitely need to make these the priority, right? These two would be Eric's priority, like no question. Okay, but that doesn't mean like yeah we can keep some. We like that doesn't mean we neglect these, right? Like you said, we're turning up heat. Like if it's like your 4-stove burner, right? All right, I'm turning up movement and endurance, and I'm just keeping strength, hypertrophy, and speed hot. All right, and if we keep it hot, like it's still like you leave it on long enough, it's gonna boil, right? Like so. This is not. We're not in a rush to get there because he's already got it.
Now is this for athletic performance?
This is for every human being, right? So let's take an example, like an adult, okay? And I'll use like Dan Shanley as an example, or we can honestly like
Amber.
try. Yeah, I was gonna say, Trevor, don't take this the wrong way, but like let's use your mom. Okay?
Yes.
So if Amber comes in, she's pretty strong. Like relatively speaking, like she's strong. Honestly, I don't know what her power is, but I'm willing to bet if we gave her some med ball and told her to throw it fast, like she could probably do a pretty decent job of that. Very lean body mass, like right, she's jacked. You can see veins in her shoulders when she does face pulls. It's sick. Movement's pretty garbage, and that's indicative of her technique in the weights. So like, and I don't mean garbage to like hurt anyone's feelings, but it's like
She has gotten better
yeah,
since she started.
most adults are gonna always suck in these three, right?
I
Because
think her endurance is actually a lot better than that, because she usually goes on like mile-long, like multi-mile.
well, sure, there you go. Yeah, and that's probably why she has lean body mass, right? So like endurance and hypertrophy are intermittently linked as well. So, but what could she stand to gain from, right? Like we drive up movement. What does that unlock? Okay, so I get somebody to move better. Lots of power, right? If you can't rotate side to side, like if I try to do this, like this is all I got when I sprint, and I give this back, how much faster am I gonna be? So much faster. Okay, so power gets jacked up. You improve this. You improve all technique in every lift because you have all your options available. So you can move into a perfect squat, and then you can then train that perfect squat with load because it's perfect, right? Like and at that point, load it up, like go crazy. Strength goes up. And then and then naturally, like this goes up, like these are all going to go up. Okay, so it's if we find what people suck at and make them better at that, that's really all you need to do. And I think for the longest time, right, we've looked at this as like, oh, like people were like, I want to lose this, or I need to get rid of that, or I need to get faster. And it's like, okay, well, it's like, I can't really tell you that's what you need. Like, that's what you think you might need, but it's like, if I like, as dumb as this is, like, it works.
It's definitely what they want.
Yeah, and like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, you can give them a little bit of what they want, but it's like, if you're trying to split up a session in terms of time, I would say like probably 90% of the time we're doing all that stuff, the stuff that they need, and the other 10% is kind of what they want. So when dad comes in here and says, hey, like, I just want to get a 6-pack, but he can't touch his toes, like, I can get him a 6-pack and get him to touch his toes at the same time. And I can actually confuse him into thinking he's trying to get a 6-pack, but really we're improving his movement options. Because I can't get someone, I have a much better chance of getting someone stronger and more lean if they can do a full squat than if this is what I got for a goblet squat, right? Because what are we really doing? Probably nothing, right? Like, you're training partial range of motions, you're not getting full length contractions, and things are inhibited, you're making other muscles weaker and shutting other stuff off.
Set yourself up for injury.
Exactly. So, like, this is genius. I heard this on a podcast. Please don't think I created this. This is from the guys at Rebel Performance. They're geniuses. But like, it's so simple. And like, but now you can go to extremes, right? Okay, so let's go to an athlete. Okay, so different for an athlete, rather than just like ourselves, is you have to take some of these to an extreme, right? Like, example, gymnasts. Right? They don't like, but like, and like, they're gonna have a decent amount of body weight hypertrophy, right? They're jacked, okay? Like, let's not get it twisted.
Depending on
Okay, but like, in relation to movement, like, I should have done this. Like, movement's gonna be like, they're gonna tap out movement, right? Endurance is gonna be good, but like, really, like, I mean, how long is a routine? Like a minute? So like, they don't need like crazy endurance. They live in that kind of minute. Like, a 4 routine for a gymnast might be like,
anaerobic.
yeah, it's anaerobic for sure. But like, that's a different type of like animal that they can kind of train, and they get a lot of that just through skill work.
I feel like their strength, their power isn't that, like, it's there for sure, but I think their strength is way more.
Yeah, stronger through range of motion.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. Okay, so then it's like, if I get like, I'm not gonna say I don't know how to train a gymnast, so but like, I'm willing to bet that like, you improve these other areas, right? Like, they get hurt a lot through more like trauma injuries. They like, it's not because they're inflexible or not strong or anything like that. It's like repetitive landing off of like 20-foot trampolines. Like, this is like a lot of force, and like, you can train that like force absorption. I mean, you can do deck drops with gymnasts all day to try to teach them how to absorb the ground, but it's like, at the end of the day, like, it just ain't happening. Like, that's like Olympic level, right? Anything we push to an extreme, like, let's take powerlifting for example, right? Barely any movement, barely any endurance, a lot of mass,
Awesome, man.
decent amounts of power. You have to have power, and like, but then like, they are a strength sport, right? So, but like, look at this. Like, it comes at a cost. Like, you can't tap. Like, or like, if you're doing a sport, we can't give them everything all the time, right? Like, it's foolish of me to think that if I because for example, like, if I had like someone like a baseball player in here who was strong, powerful, like decent hypertrophy, like, he needs just enough movement to be able to throw a baseball, right? Because like if you think about it, like, when I go into layback, when I go to pitch, like, they need to have an excessive amount here. But if I have an excessive amount here, that thing's coming out of the socket, and their labrum's tearing, the rotator cuff's tearing. So it's like, you only want enough to catch the deceleration of the arm, right? If you give them a ton, it just flops down, and like, that's no bueno. And even just for like endurance wise, right? Like, do I need them to do like crazy endurance bouts? Like, no, I just need them to be able to do enough to like recover from this stuff up here, like the higher threshold stuff. All right. Right. So like,
With a power lifter then, since they're so strong, so powerful, and they're huge, would you be able to kind of undo that without losing the strength, power, and hypertrophy, and
Probably
work
not.
on them?
No, because if you're trying to max anything out, something's got to give.
To that level.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's like day in, day out for years.
Yeah. You can you can undo it maybe if you stopped. And then at that point, if you stop, like you're gonna lose. It, right?
lose.
Like if you're consistently squatting 1,000 pounds,
Yep.
and you stop squatting 1,000 pounds to get more mobile, like you're gonna adapt to what you do, right? And so like
Eddie Hall.
yeah, like Eddie Hall was like 425, and then he just stopped doing stuff like that, and now he's slimmed down like to like a slim 350, and like is like jacked out of his mind, right? And it's just like you can't like any like sports is the world of extremes, and like that's why like sports and health are two totally different things, because there's really nothing healthy about having excessive amounts of external rotation in your shoulder and like not a lot of internal rotation, right? Like if we're looking at this from a health standpoint, we would want these to be as equal as possible and as tapped out as possible. But even that, like tapping that out to a degree, it's like if you try to tap out your strength, like you're probably going to get hurt every now and again, right? So if you look at this from an adult perspective, it's like, hey, like what are you comfortable with? Like what do you want like to be like? And that's why like goals are so important and setting standards and all this other stuff is like, okay, like you want to feel better, okay, movement, got it. How can I accomplish movement? Like we have our ways of doing that. We have like, and then like, but then it's like, hey, like if you're deadlift, like if an adult's deadlifting 400 pounds, like that's probably strong enough. That's not to say like we can't like have them go full send every once in a while because they want to, but like that doesn't need to be the priority. And so, like maybe but like we said, like other qualities that when you're such a low level, like if you're like kind of like just average, like at this low of a level, like improving one thing is going to kind of have a trickle down effect. So like I said, if I improve movement, I'm going to improve strength and power, and because I'm able to do more, I'm going to get more size and hypertrophy, and then because I can probably go longer because I can move better, I'm going to raise endurance. And then, but then at a point, like some things like strength stops in, like giving you endurance, and then you have to focus on endurance to reach a certain level of endurance, right? If you're training for a marathon, you can't do it in the weight room. You have to just get out and go run.
It's like newbie games, right?
Correct. Well, this is, yeah, 100%. Which is like what we do, right? It's, we work with youth athletes and we work with untrained adults who come to us usually after years of like, haven't done anything. So.
Right. To me, what I'm getting from this with Jim and other adults, that if you move up movement, like that's kind of what we do when we start, like work on everybody's technique, make sure we're good before we just work on strength and stuff. That correlates the most to like getting everything better.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I think, like, because think about it. Right, if you have a pyramid, it's only going to be as big as its base, right? Where if I take this here. Right, so if, like it depends on like, yeah, like what's your base, right? Like
That's mobility, basically.
probably, right? Like you should, like if you can't, I mean, I wouldn't even say mobility, but like for an adult, for a person looking to improve their life, right? Because like, why are they training? Like, why would an adult train?
Feel better, look better.
Yeah. So it's like feel better. Like,
Improve
how do I measure
health.
feel better? Like, well, like let's talk to anyone over the age of 40 who has lower back pain, hip pain, knee pain.
So let's talk about I can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
or like exactly.
Restoring variability.
Yeah, like you need.
I'm sorry.
Like,
Oh, I thought it was just these. Oh, good. Okay.
He was thinking about himself.
Yeah.
No, I really thought it
It was
was.
a joke. I think it helps for sure. Because like I think of it like a spectrum like this. I think people I've had at this gym in terms of like an athlete, if this is like kind of like.
Upside down pyramid.
No, it's not even like a pyramid. It's more like a continuum where it's like, hey, like, here's the middle ground. We have like our chaotic individuals. That's like your little like amoebas who are just like squiggling around in space. They have no control over their body. Their heads over here. Their hips. Like you're literally just trying to not fall over. All right.
Couldn't do a lunge to save your life.
And then you have like rigid individuals, which is great for power and strength. And you're gonna probably have a great amount of hypertrophy, but then you're gonna lack other things. So it's like, I look at people that I've had for probably 3 or 4 years here, they're all over here, okay? What I'm starting to kind of do now is bring them back here. Because we got them so rigid that we robbed them some movement options. Not in a bad way, but like in a way where it's like, okay, like, you're strong enough.
Yeah.
So now it's like, if you think about it like this, like, hey, we got somebody who was like this, okay, and we jack this up because we value strength. Sport is very, like, strength matters. Power goes right along with that, power and speed. You just get this as a byproduct of these two, all right, and then this is probably okay, and then this is probably down a little bit. So it's like, yeah, we increased 3 out of the 5, but or actually really probably more like 4 out of the 5, but then we took away 1. So now it's like, hey, like, I don't need to work nearly as hard to keep this here, okay? So I can focus, maybe drive this a little bit so they recover faster and they feel better, right? Like endurance, like great studies showing like aerobic like function impact, like sleep is amazing, right? You get an adult, like somebody who like hasn't worked out in a while, you have them go work out and they sleep like a rock. They're always like, oh, I've never been able to sleep. It's like, well, you just don't do anything. So like you raise endurance, like kids start sleeping better, like brain function improves, like they're more cognitively aware, like things are clicking. I was talking with Alex about this earlier, like as soon, like I feel like I can sleep like 6 hours sometimes, and like my little thing will tell me my HRV, which basically says like how ready are you for the day, and like I can sleep 6 hours and be like at like a 95 out of 100, which is because that speaks to your quality. If you have a wide range like that, and like you do a wide base of activities, like you have the better your endurance essentially, the better you can recover. Because that's all this is really used for, unless you're doing an endurance like competition, is like we use that to recover. And then I can start to kind of bring this stuff back because maybe I got them too strong, and now when they sprint, they just look a little stiff, or like they can't, like they're good here, but now when we put them in a crossover run, it's like, oh, like they just don't look comfortable there, and like they need to be comfortable there. Which is like, think about it though, right? You can't. Like if they start here, you have to bring them there first, because like I can't take, like if I take someone who is chaotic and I put them here, it's going to be like where you just like you can't stop sideways, or you can't stop in general. It's like you have to look at where they're at. So if we get someone who's super chaotic, like you need to give them rigidity via like strength, hypertrophy, and power. I wouldn't worry like too much about these, because like sometimes it's kind of true, but like this isn't really true all the time. But it's like they probably have just gross amounts of movement because they're a kid, right? Like they haven't really done anything to like compress themselves down. They haven't really done anything to restrict themselves. So like they can move pretty decently. I mean, some kids aren't like that. Like some kids.
That's really tied into personality, I noticed.
Yeah, right. The kids who love to move and are jittery, like they're just like little itty bitty like bags of like Jello flopping around.
Kids that are very shy and they're just so rigid.
Yeah, right, and then that goes into neurological effects, right? Like a shy kid is always scared and timid. Like, so what do? Tighten up. They don't even realize it. Like, you go up to somebody and it's like, ooh, there's like actually shoulders. Like, in even the adults that come in here, you see like the squinty eye, like the vein in the neck and the forehead. Like, you're like, dude, we're not even doing anything. Like, what's wrong? Like.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're driving in stress. Like you're literally like nothing's happening, but somehow you've told your brain that you're stressed out, and so it locks you up. Yeah, like then that's why like this like sports psychology. Yeah, I come in here all the time. I say, you're always like here, and because you're driving yourself more here, which is fine. Like that's what you were trying to pursue. Like you look great, so it's like do it. Like you don't need a lot of movement if you don't want it. But it's also like that comes with more just tension, right? Like I was talking to Eric and Carly the other day, like she was like talking about like when he was super strong, it's like the same thing. Like he was always just like, oh, my neck, my shoulder, like everything just hurts because everything's squeezing the crap out of your bones. You're like, dude, like no wonder you hurt. Like you need to be able to move and breathe.
Train like a power lifter.
Yeah.
I feel like a power lifter.
Yeah. That's right. That's a good T-shirt. Does this make sense? Like I hope this simplifies things, because like
100%.
at least when you're looking at an athlete, right? Like, how are you viewing your athlete? Okay, like, who am I looking at right now? It's like, okay, Jenna, ridiculously strong and powerful, great hypertrophy, endurance is pretty decent. Like, she plays 3 sports with all kind of weirder energy systems. She gets a good dose of that. Movement's kind of crap.
I just figured that out last night. She was doing leg swings, and I'm like, get your legs up.
She can't.
She's like, I'm trying.
Well, watch how she sprints. There's not much movement there.
there's like sprinters are tight by nature.
Right.
Like lower, like 100 meter and down sprinters are either like longer and really tight, or they're shorter and really tight. Like but like the common theme there is like tension. because they're powerful individuals.
Her
That's
frontal plane is like this.
yeah,
Here.
she's like missing on probably like over half of like her hips. Like her hips just don't got it, and like even just like getting her, like I said, trying to touch her toes. Like she can get about here. That's like a good day.
Right. I think the hardest one to teach, at least in my opinion, would be the movement part.
Very hard to teach. I didn't learn it until the summer.
Yeah.
But like that's now like why like perfect question, because now we'll just transition into kind of more the anatomy stuff. You need to understand it. And I think I'm gonna be honest, like the reason we haven't done this so much is I just really don't know how to teach it. It's really hard for me to try to think of like these principles, because like I've taken classes, yeah, like do I remember all the stuff from that? No, but it's also like it's just tough to kind of remember what's what. So like I'm gonna try to go over some like relevant stuff, and like I'm gonna make it more practical so you guys can feel this. I really don't have a plan. Something great out of this.
What about here? Can't be too far away.
Eric, you're in the shot, just to let you know. Oh, okay, we'll go right here. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, let's just go over like general motions and like big stuff. Okay, we don't even need to get into the nitty gritty, but it all like think about it like this. It all starts with your torso. So like your skull, your backbone, your spine, your ribs, and your hip bones. Okay, like that's all called your axial skeleton. Okay, like think of like axis on the body, right, straight up and down with your spine. Okay, that's like your anchor, right? Because your legs, your arms, everything else falls off of that, okay? So stuff that's all connected to that is usually the problem with movement, okay? So that's why like we get you on the table and like, right, I'm looking at your ribs, I'm looking at what happens at your shoulders, and what happens at your hips, because your shoulders are gonna tell me what's happening at your rib cage, and your legs are gonna tell me what's happening at your hips. So for stuff like this, right, like think of like, let's like just think about this in just like very gross terms, like very general terms, like if I'm looking at the front side of your body, like what's connected to kind of like upper rib cage is gonna be like, you're looking at pecs, you're looking at abs, all right, and then back side of your body, right, you're looking at like back your shoulders, upper back, and then working your way down, it's the same thing, right, like got a lot of abs, your abs literally connect your pelvis to your ribs, right in here, okay. And then going into your hip muscles, you have all these hip musculatures that come in, they kind of mesh into your lower back. Then they even like you have like your quads connect from your hip bone all the way down to your knee, and your hamstrings do the same thing. Your hamstring comes from the back of your butt, or like right at the bottom of your butt, the fold of your butt cheek, all the way down to the outside of your knee. So like right here, that's where your lateral hamstring connects. There's three of them. So you have one out on the outside, one in the middle, and one on the inside. So that's why I can go like this, right? And that's a hamstring movement, right? My lower leg isn't connected to my heel. Like it's not like I'm doing anything with my lower leg. It's that if I dangle it here, my hamstring is what pulls my heel up. But it's also what extends my butt backwards. So like then you gotta think, there's two words called proximal and distal, right? Proximal means closer to your axial skeleton. Distal means further away, okay? So like my knee is more proximal than my ankle. It's closer to me. So then you can think about that in joints, but you can also think about that with muscles, right? So if I have, this would be my distal hamstrings insertion, right? Where it inserts, where it starts, or it attaches rather. And then up here, that's gonna be what you call like proximal hamstring. And then same thing here, right? I have this huge glute muscle back here. I'm gonna have more proximal, where it starts here on kind of the side of my hip, and then comes around to the back. It's gonna be more distal. So that's stuff important, right? So like when I'm training an RDL, I'm training hamstrings, but I'm training distal hamstring, because what is this motion here? It's what extends my hips when I sprint. So when I'm here and I hit the ground, right, I extend back, my hamstring contracts, sends a message up to my glute, and it pushes my hip forward, and I can propel myself. So you train that with an RDL. That's how you get it stronger, and then you got to train it with fast, right, because there's different velocities. And then like you train your knee through your knee flexion via hip thrust, leg curls, stuff like that, bent leg variations. So there's two sides of every muscle to train, essentially. sometimes 3 if it's like a tricep, right? There's 3 attachments, so like there's 3 like points of which you're going to train at. But like all that to say, in terms of getting movement better, like now like that you kind of know that, you have to know what the motion is. Okay, and so like in terms of that, there's really only a few motions and they're all intimately linked. Okay, so you have a joint can extend, it can adduct, it can pronate, and it can internally rotate. So let's break that down. If I'm looking at somebody's hip, okay, internal rotation would be if the knee goes towards the body. Okay, so if I go like that, or like if I were to kind of sit up here, more so, and just turn my heel out to the side. Yeah, your leg's going away from your body, but look, it's an opposite reaction up top here. So this leg swings out, my knee goes in. So if you look at this, if I were to strip off all my skin and I'm holding my leg bone like this, I have to turn it in. So I'm turning inside, internal rotation. Boom, okay. So once I do that, what else is happening? Okay, when I do this, my bone also shifts in towards the middle of my body. Okay, so think of if I have my body here and you draw a straight down line down the middle of me. Okay, everything approaching my midline would be adducting, right? Think I'm I'm adding to my body. Okay, so if I'm here and I'm gonna internally rotate, my knee adducts, or my femur, my whole leg adducts. So, and then it also extends though too. So like, think about it from more, like this will make more sense from a spring standpoint, okay? So think of me, I'm at top speed. As I come up, and I come down, I'm coming over this leg, and I'm going to my next stride, boom. When my leg hits this position here, my hip is extended, because extension is gonna drive my foot in a little bit, and then so it's extension, internal rotation. When I internally rotate, I always adduct, okay? So it's coming into my body, and then like I said, pronating is if these are my feet, that's going on the inside of your foot, right? And that's why we have an arch, right? Because when I come in the sprint, I'm going to land on the more pinky toe side of my foot. As I come over my mass, my foot's going to kind of pancake, and then as I come off, I'm going to hit off my big toe. So it's literally like boom, boom, and it's what happening is you're loading into your arch, collapse it, and then it snaps back, like one of those little poppy things when you turn them inside out and set them there, and they blow up, just like that. And then that's kind of like, you use those for obviously like certain exercises or whatever, but like this is just general motion of the body. There's also the opposite of that. So like if you think about it, so we just did everything in. If I do the opposite, so I take this leg and I externally rotate my femur, I turn it out, what happens is I externally rotate, it flexes, it abducts, so think abduction, right? You're taking it away from the middle of your body, and then it supinates, right? So it comes out, you come out more like the outside of your foot. It's the same concept for baseball, okay? If I'm throwing a ball, I come to full back, okay? I'm flexing, I'm abducting, my shoulder externally rotates, and then I'm kind of like if you're holding the ball, you're probably going to feel more pinky if you really, really thought about it, right? You do it fast enough, you don't really think about it. But then as I come to follow through, I extend my shoulder, I internally rotate, I adduct my arm, and then as I finish the ball, I finish through down, right? That's how you throw a football, right, Bob? Like that's how everyone tells you to do that. That's a natural motion. Like that's like, because if you go like this, like nothing really happens, right? So I come here, boom, okay? So what I'm looking for is people get restricted there, right? So I can't, so for whatever reason, I lay you on the table, or like if I think of a split squat, right? Like everyone should be able to do both, essentially. If you look at it from like who we work with, like if I get in a split squat and what's the common thing we see here, right? All right. So this would be internal rotation, right? My knee's going in, I'm adducting, they can do that. All right. The problem is it's just too much, right? So that could be a whole host of reasons, right? You could have certain hips that just force you to stay here, right? If you look at the way my arms face, my thumbs are in. They should be here. Like a perfect human being would stand like this. Okay, but they're in because I'm internally rotated based off just my life and my skeleton, right? Like I've driven a lot of tension and mass onto my body, which is gonna compress me and it's internally rotated me into my arms, right? Because I lived here for bench, like I bench here, like so like I wanna live in this state when I was a powerlifter. What the problem is like when people are stuck in one spot, you want to just get it back to the normal. So like that's why you always see, hey, like that's why you tell people bring their knee in. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's an overcorrection. Like so, like if I look at it like, can your knee stay over your heel? Okay, so when it starts to go here, it's not over my heel. And even here, like that's probably good enough. Okay, so when I'm here, I'm gonna keep it over my heel. And I'm looking for something that's going to be kind of just more neutral. So like if you use somebody's foot as a guide. If I'm split squatting, I just want to touch over my foot. That's all I'm looking for. Does that stuff making sense? That's kind of like, I know it's kind of like.
Just, I have a question on
please.
The abducting. Is it you're moving stuff closer to your
and
midline or away?
If I say, did you say AD?
Yes.
So it's adduction. I just say adduction. That's easier.
Okay.
Adduction, okay, adding to your body, bringing it closer. Abducting, abduction.
Gotcha.
Think of like kidnapping a kid. Yeah, like the kid was abducted. He was taken away.
That's what I was
You got it. Now, to go on with this, like, basically our job is to put people in positions to train what they don't have, okay? So there are muscles that internally rotate, right? So for this, it's gonna be my groin is going to pull in, and then my glute fiber on the outside, your glute med is your hip internal rotator. Okay, so when I feel this here, like if I push my foot down on the ground and I peel my knee in without moving my foot, I feel butt, I feel groin. Okay, so we want muscles that externally rotate. That's going to be, if I do the same thing, push my foot in the ground and peel it back, you're going to feel different glute fiber, and you're going to feel more kind of quad and outside your leg. Go ahead and do that right now. Just like literally just stand up here. And just kind of get most of your weight in your front foot. Okay, and then like don't just like sit there. I want you to push your whole foot down. You're probably gonna feel your leg light up, right? Okay, and now just drive it towards your arch. Like you should feel like outside of your butt cheek. Yeah, ouch. All right, and then you should feel a little bit of groin. Yep. A lot of groin. Okay, Eric's got no adduction. All right, keep your foot there, and now grossly pull it back towards your pinky side. You see how that switches to the different part of your butt? That's because you're doing a different motion, right? So, like for example, if I got someone who like pretend this is like my kettlebell. If I got someone in the house that's been seeing me doing this too, like if I got someone who's diving in here, okay, I need more external rotation to the hip. Okay, and I can coach them to like, hey, don't hit my hand, okay, okay, managed it, great. But if they like sometimes they just you don't have all day to see it with the kid. So it's like when we're trying to restore movement, I'm trying to find better ways to put kids in positions just to succeed. So it's like if I know, like I'm seeing that, it's like, okay, hey, next set, like if I'm here, everything's kind of coming in. It would probably help if I got him more out. So how can I get him more out? I'm probably just gonna put a weight on his outside hand. So that's why you see like with like I was putting kids who were just living here, put a weight out here. Oh, it's pulling me out to the outside. And like, you okay? Now like set yourself again. It just puts them there.
That makes sense.
Right? So like anything you see like that, any weird tweaks that I make, I'm just correcting what I'm seeing. Because like that's why I always say it's really hard to teach you guys off the script stuff because it's just like I don't know what this person's capable of. Same thing for like you could do the same thing for a bench press. You can do the same thing for any exercise. Really, is like anytime I do a motion. So let's dissect the bench press here. If I'm here, you can hold this. If I'm laying down here, and you can get really nitty gritty with this stuff too. That's why I say like the sensory motor. Like if we're teaching adults this, or even more kind of toned up, rigid athletes, like you need to think about this. You need to know how to do this stuff. So it's like if I'm coming down, what's happening? I'm flexing, I'm abducting, and I'm externally rotating. And then when I go to punch, I'm going to extend, adduct, internally rotate. Okay, and you don't have to. You're not obviously ending up here, right? But like if I'm here, if I'm here, I'm going to feel external rotate, flexion, abduction, finish. Okay. And your hands also work like your feet too, okay? So like this would be supination, pinkies roll in, pronation would be thumbs come in. So you can do that. I've had people who've just had shoulder pain where I'm like, hey, on the way down, feel your pinkies, right? Because when you externally rotate, you also have to supinate, so they have to come out a little bit, all right? If I'm feeling pinkies down, I'm like, holy crap, my shoulder feels fine. And then I'm like, hey, on the way up, feel the meat of your thumb, because that's going to encourage them to pronate. Okay. And the trick is, though, you got to do it slow, and it's a lot of thinking. You can't go heavy when you're thinking a lot. So it's like, okay, like I got to really manage all this stuff here and then do this all at the same time. Significantly harder.
Is that why baseball players do the neutral grip for the shoulders?
Correct, because they grossly externally rotate here. Okay, so they live here. And like I said, they don't need a lot here. Okay, honestly, you give them more of that, they're probably gonna get worse. So it's like, let's just kind of put them in the middle and let's not worry about it, because that's gonna strengthen basically what we need to strengthen, without like being a detriment to like what they're capable of doing. Say for most overhead athletes, right? Because I go up to hit a volleyball. What is this? This is kind of neutral, but it's also like little internal rotation action, but like stuff changes. So
Is it when we're doing the split squat thing, when we externally rotate, is it more a muscle issue or like that they?
well, they're untrained,
or
right?
Is it just because they don't know what they're doing?
So in here, let's go back to that concept of like proximal and distal, okay? So when I do this and pull it back, okay, that is a distal correction. Okay, I'm taking my knee, right? It's further away from my hip. Like we're training a hip, right? We're training the hip flexor. All right, if I pull it back, that's a correction, okay? What could I also do here? Turn my hip, that's a proximal correction. Okay, so you'll see me, hey, point your zipper at your big toe. Whoop! Does the same thing. Now, what you need to know is like what's going on at the hips, right? So like that's why we always say, hey, you gotta tuck your hips, because if my hips aren't tucked, like I'm sitting here, look at my toes. I start in external rotation. Like my toes are out. I'm externally rotated. And this can be like deceiving, because like somebody like Dan, his foot is crazy externally rotated, but his hips are internally rotated. He has what's called the screw hole mechanism. So this is the bottom of his leg. This is his femur bone. Screwed. Okay, and then you can slowly over time fix that. But his hips are so beat up from football and everything, and he's had to get into this position here to drive external rotation and try to be fast. It's just like years and years of that has just made his like legs adapt, and like over time he just. So like even like with like a shoulder thing, like it's the same thing, right? Like if I say like I'm here, right, I would benefit greatly from doing a lot of pulls here, because what does happen? I'm externally rotating, but that's distally, okay? So I'm turning my thumbs out, that's down away from my body. What's happening in my shoulder blade where my arms connect? They're internally rotating. So the opposite, whatever you do here happens the opposite of your hip or your shoulder, okay? So like whatever you do with your arms and legs, the opposite is gonna happen on your rib cage or your hips.
That makes sense.
And the same goes with emotion, right? If I go to pitch a baseball, I come up here, I flex, how do you do this? Well, when you go to throw, okay, so I think this arm extends, abducts, internally rotates, and pronates. This arm flexes, and then I go to flip it. Look what happens. It's an equal and opposite. Look at when you sprint. Flexion, abduction, external rotation, back legs extending, abducting, internally rotating. Bang. And you're just switching those. So if people can't do that though, right? Or if they're really good at one and they're bad at the other, that's why people hurt, essentially. Is because what happens is I'm really good at using my extension and like adducting and internally rotating muscles, but I don't use these other ones. So now stupid little injuries or like little things nag me that hurt. Like for example, like we give Eric a drill that gets him to squeeze a ball and uses that glute, that low, like that kind of like outside upper glute. Like he's like, holy cow, like my back, like he literally feels taller. Like he looks tall, like just because like he's compressed, and so like I get that to kind of loosen up because he's being pulled externally, right? Because he can't internally rotate. We know that because he's got weak adductors. So it's like if we give him what he doesn't have, that literally sends a message, hey, chill out, we got this. I'm like, oof, like you relax.
It's from all that hip thrust you do late at night.
So that's a lot, okay? Like I learned all that this summer, and it's so much more vast and complex. But that's like literally like the most general like elevator pitch, like the longest 20-minute elevator ride of your life, right? But it's like that elevator pitch helps us understand what we're looking for now a little bit better, I would hope. Sick. Okay. Because then it's like you got to look like always start proximally, right? If I get someone who's here, hey, just like point your tip of your toe, okay? Like, because their hips are all wonky. Look at it, like my hip bone is one's higher than the other, and they're done forward, okay? So you also got to think about like this. We talked about the 3 planes of motion. There's like your front to back, your side to side, and your kind of 360 degrees. They order that way for a reason. If you don't have control of the front to back, you can't even get into the side to side. Okay, so anytime I go into a split stance, I'm asking the frontal plane to come in. Okay, so that's why everything we do needs to start bilateral. Okay, if I can't hinge like this and just use hamstrings and glutes, how am I supposed to use abductors and adductors as well as the hamstrings and glutes, right? It's like you're asking me to do something that I can't do. And that's why it's wrong. Like you guys are like, it's not they can't do that because you're a bad coach, or they're literally just not strong enough to even do it in the first place.
So,
or they don't even know how to use those muscles because they're just not positioned correctly. So like we see somebody do a straight leg kick, single leg RDL. What's happening at their hips, right? I am just boom, like this bottom leg is externally rotated, this top leg is like splaying out here. And that's why I'm like, hey, like if you like let's get your hips in the right way. If I go here, I actually feel what I want to feel. It's different.
Think of Josh when you talk about all this.
Yeah, and so like the other day, like I had Josh, hey, hold a kettlebell on your outside leg. Perfect split squat.
Or Levi.
Yeah, and like for him, it's like, one, he's 10, so it's like,
Yeah.
he needs rigidity regardless, so like he's gonna be floppy, but yeah, any kid who's like very comfortable in their own skin is gonna be very chaotic.
Right.
Because they don't have the tones, like the what?
I'm trying to scare him.
I'm trying to, no.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
Tighten up, young one.
So let's talk sagittal plane then, okay? Sagittal plane would be controlling the rib cage and the pelvis first, all right, front to back. Okay, so what does front to back means? It means kind of scissoring up and scissoring down. Okay, so let's think hip tuck, ribs down. Okay, this is much easier to teach on the ground. Okay, like think of like the stages of life when you're a baby, ground's your friend, right? Like the closer you get to the ground, the less you have to manage gravity. Okay, so it's a lot easier to teach anyone how to hip tuck or anything like this if I'm on the ground here. Okay, it's like, hey, I just want you to tuck your hips. So like even like resets have progressions in a sense because I need to teach them to do certain things before I can even get them to reset or do something like that. So it's like, okay, all right, I need you to feel your low back and I need you to use your hips to tuck them instead of your abs, right? So that way, when you see somebody crunch like that, you're using your six pack, okay? That's just your rectus. That's a very, very weak, like, what you call posterior tilter of the pelvis, right? Because if your pelvis is up forward, we're trying to tilt it backwards. It's posterior tilting, posterior back tilting. All right, it's very weak. Okay, you can do it, and that's why like you look great. But it's like I said, you have all these mismatchy like hash abs underneath. We got to get into those, and those take a lot of thought and like a lot of like kind of concentration. So if this is me, like I'm like okay, like do it, and like I crunch here. It's like, oh hey, are your abs tight? Yeah. Okay, relax. Now do it and keep your abs soft. What do I feel? I feel glutes. I feel lower hamstring. Like that kind of picks it up because your hamstring actually connects on your pelvis. You guys didn't know that previously. So these little, if you look at these little knobs here, right? This is a front view of the pelvis, okay? Kind of shaped like a bowl, right? When you breathe in, your guts fall down here. When you breathe out, they come up, okay? But like it's not showing you here, but like look at this is like your adductor comes in, attaches on this. Your hamstring comes at the back and attaches on it. So what happens is if I have this bowl is dumped forward towards you, and these little rings are on the back side, right? So that little ring's right about here. If I flex it, it pulls down, right? Because I'm shortening my hamstring. So if I shorten this muscle here and it tightens, that's gonna pull me out of it. And if I can't get here to start with, it's like we talk about in mock drills, right? If I can't get here, like you're gonna see kids like marching here, like, hey, get your knee up. They're like, oh, I am getting my knee up. It's like, whoosh, like, whoa, what the heck? Like,
Flanders.
Yeah, dude. Like I said, like he's so like tight, but he's like because he tries too hard to use the wrong muscle, so he tries to use his abs, and that's gonna kind of keep him like still extended, and like it just doesn't. He's something else. Like I like. But you got to see though, like I'm showing you everything. Like that's hard to correct in a session. That's gonna take time. Unless you're coming here for an hour, we just hammer it out and only focus on that. Like, is that the best use of his time at his age? Maybe. I don't know. But
For the right price.
for the right price. Yeah, like your money. Yeah. So where's it going with that? I think. Progressing it. So using the right muscles matters to get out of that position, right? Because if we can get this here tucked, okay, you still might have a little bit of a rib flare, but then at that point, just breathe out, okay? But you don't want to invite too much tension, so it's like, take your time. It has to be long and slow because then we're not using this top layer. The bottom layer is going to kind of do its job, kick on and hold you in place, okay? And now we can kind of do an exercise and just breathe behind this, but you have to keep it. So like if I go and take a big breath, I lose it. So it's like if I get set here, okay, so if I'm on the ground, I'm going to tuck my hips first. And I feel abs get tight. I can talk to you and do it. It's really hard for people to even do anything. But then I'm going to breathe behind this. So if I'm going overhead. And so I just need to sync up my breathing and while still keeping that engaged. It's not forceful because that's a whole other conversation in itself of this whole kind of like you're bringing stress. Like anytime we extend, it's a stress. It's called a stress pattern. Okay, so I get into a barbell for a back squat. I extend under the bar. My chest comes forward. My back is extending, and then I got to move it. Stressful. Deadlifting, extension pattern. Stressful. So it's like you're inviting rigidity, which is good for some people. And then you're developing strength, which is great for pretty much everyone. But now it's like the way I look at this now is like, okay, when we do accessory work, why are we inviting? Like we don't need to stress them out in accessory work. Mm-hmm. Right? You could think of like the first time you did a reset, right? You woke up the next day and you couldn't even feel your butt cheeks. Mm-hmm. Like if we coach it right, we don't have to worry about it, right? Because like it's like, hey, like, but that kind of goes to one, you got how you coach it. Like, are you setting the stage like, hey, this next exercise takes a tremendous amount of concentration. Like I did this with Ray. Like Ray can do it. Like I think like how you talk to people is huge. Mm-hmm. But like getting him to do a correct CHG, like a partner CHG, because he extends. He's using his lower back to lower himself. I'm like, dude, like you're not like you're getting a little bit of hamstring, but it's like, hey, like dude, like I know you'd run through a wall for me. I just need you to slow down and think a little bit. So it's like, hey, tuck your hips, but keep your chest up. And he's like, yeah, and just fall slow. But like as soon as your head goes past your butt, you gotta stop. And so he like starts to feel that, and he kind of corrects back. He likes like set like. It's all about how you present it. If you feel like, hey, hurry up, get this done. Hey, we gotta go. You're stressing them out, which is fine in some instances. But we gotta know who needs what. Some people need that. Some people, hey, load up that split squat. We gotta go to work. Some people like, hey, you're strong enough. I'm gonna try to restore certain things here. But it's like, okay, like if I'm seeing somebody here, back hips wide open, okay, and I'm getting a little bias towards external rotation or internal rotation. Hey, let's twist the hips. Get your head over your butt. Okay, stack everything up. We're gonna tuck my hips, keep my ribs down, and I'm just gonna live here. Okay, I do it slow. Sucks. Okay, and it's like that's usually what you're gonna see is like you're gonna have your chaotic people who want to go through it fast because they have no control. Slowing them down is good because it actually does make them more rigid. And then you have the people who are super rigid, right? Who are like super rigid. Who rely on tension to bounce out of positions, or you rely on tension to like muscle out of it and do it quickly because they're explosive. They're more kind of like powerful fiber types. Perfect example. Deadlift, right? Anytime he deadlifts, no matter if it's 500 or 315, it looks the same. Super powerful. But like slowing him down, yeah, like is he strong enough? Yeah, dude, like if you deadlift 500 for reps and like he's good at sprinting, like he would benefit so much more from getting out of this duck butt. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if I put him in a rear leg elevated, that puts him even further in it. So it's like, what would I do? I'd probably have to get him like on a front foot elevated. Like it's like, we gotta see what's in front of us and then just kind of provide the tool, right? Tool exercise is a toolbox. We assess accordingly. And that's why that sheet is super helpful, right? I try to put variations in there that kind of work for everyone. sometimes you got to go a little off the script. And as we get better with this, like you guys will be able to do that no problem. Like, oh, geez, like why would I ever have this person do this? This makes zero sense. Like, it's going to make them worse.
That's exciting.
Isn't it? It should. It should make it a lot more challenging for us, right? Because I think it's easy, like once you figure out how to manage it, right? Especially like week 2 or 3, like you feel like you're going through the motions. But like this stuff never ends, man. And like at the younger level, like I'm not telling you, like don't worry about this too much at the younger level, right? Like I said, we need to get sagittal plane. Like can they just kind of get here and keep their head over their ribs and their ribs over their hips? Like that's good enough for now. But it's like, it's kind of like say you don't take your car in the shop if nothing's wrong with it, right? But when stuff starts to seem a little off, or like we're seeing stuff that's not working, now then we're gonna start to kind of correct, right? Because we don't want to mess with people too much. Because like part of the reason is like maybe someone's really internally rotated, and that's why they're so good at their sport. We just don't know, right? Like I wonder like what does Patty Mahomes look like on the table? I don't know. Like he's probably like him, LeBron. Like you think of any outlier, they probably just have all their degrees of freedom, and like it's trained. So it's like strong, it's powerful, and they can move. Right? That's kind of the common thread of every good athlete is one, they can shift in and out of the frontal plane, and then they can sprint, which is a lot of the transverse plane. So like they have the basics so pegged down, but they do it genetically, and like that's why you can't pick this stuff up. Like some kids just don't have it. Most kids just don't have it.
I'm sure there's some movement that's limited too. Like think about when does LeBron need to get below 30 degrees?
Yeah, right, exactly. Like he lives in this like 0 to probably like 45 degrees is probably kind of like a quarter squat. Like he jumps out of a sprint, like an upright sprint half the time, and he never he'll get here, but it's like what is this? This is like if you measure this distance right here, you could literally grab that going out and put it on my hip. It's probably like 60 degrees. So like people knock him for doing his little BS like little quarter squats. I'm like, dude, like one, he's LeBron, doesn't need to squat. 2, he lives there, so like sports specific wise, that's actually kind of a smart squat.
Yeah, and I'm sure his trainer has him do like his single leg stuff outside of that. That's not.
Dude, yeah. If I was LeBron's trainer, like, hey, what do you want to do today? Let's do it.
Right.
Like,
Don't eat me.
no, and it's not don't eat me. It's like don't mess up a $1 billion athlete. Like it's just like he doesn't need your help, right? Like I mean, like no strength program like got someone like that. Like strength programs get like the people who are either like who are low level to like an intermediate, or the intermediate and sometimes can make them advance when like done correctly. Like you're high level, right? Like
just maintaining it.
Yeah, you don't
Injury
need.
prevention.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to do anything to maintain a high level. Like you can't take the barbell with you on the court, so like you don't necessarily need it.
Look what happened to Tiger Woods when he started like getting jacked.
Yeah.
He started riddled with back injuries, and now he's
Great. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point.
He wanted to be jacked so he could like live that lifestyle and do the whole thing, and now he doesn't play half as much golf and doesn't win almost a quarter of the time because.
Yeah, look at Kevin Hart. He's like half as funny as he used to be.
It's a great example. Yeah.
Everything comes at a cost, right? So now it's like, okay, let's be like, now that we're aware of it, what are we gonna put back in to like kind of undo some of the crap we're doing? And there's a whole there's a 90-page ebook in the drive that literally this whole talk I based was based off of that today. Yeah, it's a lot of just pictures and videos of like, hey, like here's ribs up, hips back. What happens when we close the distance? And here's what I've been having my kids do. If you want to teach how somebody to do this really well, just standing up, you don't have time. Like, hey, like you're like this. Okay, put your thumbs on your ribs and your pinkies on your hips. Now close the distance. Like make that distance get smaller without moving your chest, right? Because they're gonna want to go. No, I can't move my chest. So it's like. Oh, okay. Like, do you feel that a little bit in your hips? Like, yeah, I feel that in my hips. Like, okay, cool. So, hey, before you lunge, you need to do this. Get your weight, and do it. But hey, it's not a flex, right? Because if you look at my low back and I curl it like this, like now I'm flexing. You're going too far in the opposite direction. You're overcorrecting. So I just want to get back to boom here. Subtle. You should just feel a little bit in your butt flat. Yeah. See?
It's a little thrust.
It's not even a thrust. It's like a tilt, like tilt back. Like think of the bones on your hips, right? Like this, if this is my bowl. My bowl is kind of here. Just tilt the bowl a little bit. Just hold it up. Yeah. But now do this, okay? You doing that, now if you try to do any exercise, ab city, okay? Like think about a bench press, right? If I go to bench, and I'm like, I'll sit up here, like, and it's good to, like, if I'm trying to move weight, I'm gonna arch. It's gonna make it easier. But if I'm here, and I'm extended, all right, I'm finishing here, and it's like, hey, are your hips tucked? I'm like, well, no. It's like, he's like, tuck your hips. I go, like, oh, my abs. And then you go to load, and your body's trying to shift, but you're not trying to move it. You're gonna get so much, like, side ab. And that's why so many people have back pain. Like, think of, like, Lily. Like, if you get Lily to tuck and keep that in all her exercises, I promise you, like, in a month, she could probably deadlift 185.
She's here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's compressing.
Well, it's like, yeah, like, if you look at the spine, and like the vertebrae, like the discs, like run up the back. Like if your pelvis is coming forward, it's gonna kind of compress a disc a little bit. So whether it's she has a compressed disc, like or like anything like that, I don't know. I haven't seen an MRI, but it's like you put load on that, it's probably not gonna feel good. It doesn't necessarily mean like it's doing damage per se. But like I said, like so what does a toe elevated do? Tilts the hips up. Right, you get your weight back on your pelvis. Not always, right? So I still like some people you put like, and the higher it goes, probably the more they're going to shift back and tuck without you even saying anything. That's why I usually do it because I'm like, hey, it's going to be really hard for me to teach a kid to go here, keep it, and like it's okay to be in a little extended in a deadlift. I don't care. I'm really looking for like, can you keep your ribs down and can you keep your head over your butt or in line with your butt?
So that's why slowing it down probably hurt her more because you're just slowing it down.
Yeah, because she's still extending through her back. She's not like so like she would need like probably 10s first of all, and you got to tell her what to feel, right? So what do we want to feel on the deadlift?
Well, this was with goblet squat.
Yeah, hamstrings and abs. So if she's not feeling predominantly hamstrings, she's using her low back because your low back's gonna pick up all that slack. So it's like I need to like so it's like hey Lily, keep your ribs like down without moving your chest. Oh, okay. Now just stick your butt out. Still kind of feeling your abs a little bit? Yeah. Wow, that didn't hurt at all. But you have to start back over, like lighter. And yeah, even for a goblet squat, right? Look at my back here. Yeah, no, I'm not feeling okay. What about here? So like think about it. Anytime I reach, it's going to shift my center of body or my center of mass backwards.
RKC plank, right?
Yeah, right. This RKC plank is here, and then you're just going to intensify by holding it, by making your body contract instead of waiting for it to contract. So like for her, if she's doing a 50, like she could do like a 44, I'd have her grab a 13 or like an 18, hold it out in front of her, and make her feel her heels, right? Because what's her problem? She's coming too far forward and arching instead of like I can't even do it without a heel lift, but it's like instead of being here and kind of keeping your weight on your mid-foot heel, right? But like, you got to be careful, right? Because you'll say feel heels, and you'll see kids go like this. You want to feel the whole foot. But like 80% of your weight's in your heel, and you can't just say, "Hey, put 80% of your weight in your heel." Like that's hard to do. So like, when you say like feel heel, it's usually I'm just trying to get them to grossly overcorrect. So like they're so toe. Then I'm like, hey, like because you'll see people at the bottom of their squat, heels come off the mat. So I'm like, hey, heels. I'm like, oh, whoa, you know. It's all how you start though. If you can't start them in the right place, if they walk that bar out here and they're extended, you're already like you can't fix it. Like, hey, rack it. Okay, grab that bar. Pull your ribs down. Okay. You're gonna walk it out like you're gonna feel abs the whole time, and you can't go backwards because you are in a fixed position. So
That makes sense.
yeah, goes for every lift. It's always how you start, right? So like if I'm looking for, hey, can you keep your head over your ribs over your hips, weight over the middle of your foot, stacked. Literally, it's called the stack. All right, and like this is a good thing to do. It's like, hey, like before we get going today, like before we do deadlifts, like, hey, guys, we're really focusing on this, right? Like we're already going slow, so we know we're not going heavy. So I don't really care if you go heavy. Like I'd rather you guys cut 20 pounds a day. Let's try to keep abs like this. Do you feel this? Yes. No? Okay, stay here. You guys go ahead, get started. Feel this the whole time. What don't you get? And they're like, what aren't you feeling? And like think about this, like so athletes, it's great, right? And like it's gonna be hard. That's gonna be dang near impossible with young kids. Okay, so we kind of almost have to let them like, okay, we're gonna do as little damage as possible. Like we're not really